All right, we are in Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 to 28, the last half of the last chapter of the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to take a look at two different kinds of people that Jesus details and identifies all the way through this passage. So he contrasts the man who enters the wide gate and walks on the broad way that leads to destruction with the man who enters the small gate and walks on the narrow way that leads to life. Well, what does he mean by this? Well, let's just keep reading through the passage. Then he contrasts the bad tree, which bears bad fruit and is cut down and thrown into the fire, with the good tree, which produces good fruit. And then a little bit later on, he contrasts the man who calls Jesus Lord, but practices lawlessness, with the man who calls Jesus Lord and does the will of the Father. And then finally, Jesus contrasts the foolish man who built his house on the sand with the wise man who built his house on the rock. And the difference between those two men is that the foolish man heard Jesus' words and didn't act on them, but the wise man heard Jesus' words and did act on them. So what's Jesus' conclusion to the Sermon on the Mount? This is it. We must bear good fruit, do the will of the Father, act on the words of Jesus in order to be counted among the number of God's true children. Making a profession of faith is not enough. Hearing the words of Jesus is not enough. There must be fruit. There must be obedience. And so I just want to ask you today, how about you? Have you entered the small gate and are you walking on the narrow way that leads to life? Is your life bearing good fruit? Are you doing the will of the Father? And are you really acting on the words of Jesus? These aren't just meaningless questions. These are very important questions that every person who calls himself a child of God should take time to really ask, and ask with a sincere and honest heart. So may God work in your heart and mind today to prove that we really are the genuine, true children of God. May He richly bless you.